everybody. Welcome you into another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. We got not a whole lot to do tonight. We're going to recap the win over Wilmington. Then we have a fun topic to discuss after that. I'm going to welcome in my co-host, who you all know is Anthony. Friend, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. For a little while there on Wednesday, a little concerned, but we got it figured out, and now I think we're back to feeling pretty good about this team. I don't know. We got a little bit of a rest here for the guys, so it'll be interesting to see what the mindset is around the fan base when we hit the court next Saturday.
Yeah, Wednesday was one of those games where late tip against a inferior opponent, you worry about, will the team be into the game, because it's just sometimes it's hard to get up for a game like that. Hard for the fan base to get up for a game like that. And they definitely, you could say, sleptwalk through the first 12 to 14 minutes of the game. They were trailing at one point late in the first half before they ended the half on a run. But, overall, I thought they looked, for the most part, okay. They didn't have a starting point guard, which I thought they'd actually look a little bit better on offense than what they did. I know they scored 97 points, but the offense kind of looked stagnant at times. The spacing kind of got muffled. Took some bad shots. And I thought the bench, who was also without Brandon Robson, who was pretty much a game-time scratch, I thought they looked pretty good. But, what was your impressions or your takeaways from the 97-69 win over Wilmington?
Yeah, I looked at, just a good all-around performance from the guys. Seventh Woods has to be handed a lot of credit. He really did a great job of, just coming in and taking over that point guard spot for most of the night. I think he knew going into the game that he was going to have to lock that spot down with Kobe White being out of the lineup. And I thought he really stepped up. He started the second half on fire. And really helped us get out of the gate pretty quickly. I think, people seeing him have that great of a performance, the guys on the team really just said, we got to step our game up as well. Seventh is starting to play really well. But yeah, I thought, ultimately it was a good performance from the guys. Kenny Williams, again, the shooting numbers just really not great. But at the same time, 11 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds as well. He looked pretty good. I thought Luke May, for the most part, looked, all right. 5 of 11, again, not great, but better than what he's been shooting from the field. And then Cameron Johnson returning to, what we would expect from him. 21 points, 7 of 14 shooting the basketball. So, yeah, overall, I was, I'm not going to say I was super pleased with it. I didn't like our free throw shooting, to say the least. Shot 60% from the line, 17 of 28. So, yeah, not quite where I'd want to be. But another thing, you look, 18 offensive rebounds. That's what you want to see. So dominant on the glass. Overall, I thought, look, the team early on may have struggled just a little bit, but I thought once they settled in, especially in that second half, it looked great. Now the thing is, can you do that in a complete game? Because honestly, have there really been any games, maybe since Tennessee Tech, that they've actually done that?
Yeah, that's always the question. But, I'm the kind of guy, it's only December. Not many teams are putting together complete games or performances, especially against Wilmington. There were some, things I was looking at going into the game was, we had a week off from the Michigan nightmare. Did we get better defensively? And while it's hard to gauge that when you're playing Wilmington, you forced 25 turnovers and scored 34 points. They held them for a stretch in the second half. We were on a 30-3 run.
Right, yeah.
And I tweeted it during the game, and I wrote about it afterwards. That was the most active they looked all year in terms of getting in the passing lanes. The trap at at half court looked a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we get mad when we see guys get open for an open three, but sometimes if that guy's open, there's probably a good reason why we're okay with him taking the shot because he's just not a good shooter. And I think that's what they did. They just forced Wilmington because they got K-Cott in foul trouble early. And so they took away their low post presence, and UNCW just got complacent, started jacking up bad shot after bad shot, and I just think the team really dug in defensively in the second half, as good as they have all year long, and really sparked the run of which effectively ended the game early in the second half. You know, the free throw shooting, 28 foul shots is a great number. That's a healthy number to average when you get into the bigger games like next week against Gonzaga, Kentucky in 2 weeks, and then, of course, conference play.
Mm-hmm.
But you're leaving, I mean, you're not going to make every foul shot, but 11 points up to the foul line is too many once the games get bigger and more meaningful.
Right.
And I think they'll iron that out. But I'm with you. You know, the full 40-minute performance, they're going to need that. You know, this time next Saturday night when they're playing what's the number one ranked team in the country at the time. But the good thing is they've got another week to keep on getting ready for that kind of performance. So, is there anything else you want to touch on from the UNCW wing? I will say it was nice to see Cam still look confident in his shot.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes with shooters, it's just, man, you have a game like Michigan, it could screw you for a month, maybe the rest of the year. But he came out, was still confident, was firing them. Kenny, at some point, he's going to be more effective from the field. But if he's giving me 8 assists and he's giving me the effort on defense, I don't give a damn what his shooting numbers is because I think we'll be okay.
Right.
Well, especially when, you know, assuming Kobe's back and you're getting back his points. And then, you know, with Luke, you know, he still hasn't had the breakout like 30 and 15 game, but I just think he's got to keep grinding and eventually he'll produce. And I thought the guys off the bench, Nazir had a good night. And I thought Leakey looked as good as he's looked probably since Vegas, especially running the offense. So anything else you want to touch on from the Wilmington game?
Sterling Manley, 10 rebounds and 8 points. So really his best performance of the year. Actually, I don't even think there's any question. That's easily his best performance of the year. Nazir, yeah, liked what I saw from him. You know, again, a lot of people are going to continue to say we need to put him in the starting lineup. You know, look, do I want to see him in the starting lineup? Of course. I would like to see him in there. But at this point, you know, I think we're all kind of in that same spot. At least, you know, the guys on this podcast are where, you know, we're sitting here saying, look, we're going to trust what Roy's going to do. And clearly, look, if he's playing at a certain level come tournament time, and this is something that was reiterated by one of my guys that I work with at WFNZ, who is a Duke fan. He said, look, if he's really playing that well come tournament time, he will start. He will be in there. Because Roy's going to put out whoever gives him the best chance to win tournament games. But at the same time, I mean, again, the other night, Garrison Brooks, 7 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. I mean, you know, it's not like Garrison's doing anything wrong. I think people really just want to see Nazir out there because they feel that his talent level is better. So, but you know, again, I look at some of the other stats. Everybody scored except Shea Rush and KJ Smith, who both had chances late in the game. I wanted to ask you that as well. What did you think of Roy's post-game answer when asked about the guys shooting threes late in the game? He said that he doesn't care about the biscuits thing. He was angry that they were still shooting.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's just him.
Another classic Roy moment. I love it.
That's just him being a coach because, like, you know, it screws up the shooting percentages and you know, he's also coaching against a former player and assistant. But I mean, I don't think.
Do you think, by the way, that he actually didn't know that they gave out biscuits for scoring 100? Like he said at the start, he was like, "Wait, what?"
I don't know. This man did one time ask Fran Fraschilla if Frosty was a reindeer, so you know it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
You know, for me as a fan, I don't care that KJ Smith came in and took 4 threes. I don't care because he works his tail off in practice, and I mean I've never even went after we've got 100 to get a biscuit. Like, I'm not one of those fans that, like, that's why I want the 100. I just want to see those guys be successful because we all know how important they are to this team in practice.
Right.
So, but yeah, I thought Roy was just, coach speak. Still probably a little mad because there's so much they got to get better at. And, it's just, he's not one of those guys to kid around like that after a game. So, he'll save that more for like his pregame and all that. But, overall, the thing about Manly, and I tweeted this out, and I think if we're patient with them, and once it clicks, the talent is there for this kid to be a walking 15-10 kind of player.
He's got the size too. It's really just.
And I just,
I don't know what it is.
I know last year when him being a freshman, I was on his team as much as anybody. It's like, this guy's gonna be legit.
Mm-hmm. And
I thought over the summer, he got into a better shape. I thought he was gonna put on some more pounds, be a little bit tougher inside. It hasn't just happened yet, but neither again. When did Bryce Johnson become the kind of player he was?
Junior year.
No, literally his senior year, he finally was like, okay.
Now, junior year, he started to show some of it.
But he was still a bench guy. I mean, he never overtook McAdoo.
You want to talk about a hotly debated lineup change. There you go.
So I guess we'll transition from...
Oh, I wanted to mention one last thing. Brendan Huffman came in, played 6 minutes, 7 points on 3 of 3 shooting. So Huffman... Again, maybe not a guy that's going to see a lot of minutes, but the minutes he's been out there, he's shown us something this year.
He definitely has. So what we're going to do before we get to our fun topic.
Here we go.
We talked about the lineup change.
Okay.
And I guess what I want to do is recap the feedback I got from the article I wrote and from when we talked about it.
Let's do that. Yeah.
When we talked about it last time. I put an article out, I think it was last Sunday, about, is it time to do this after the Michigan loss? We are, of course, putting Nazir Little into the starting lineup, taking out Garrison Brooks. And like you said, Brooks' production doesn't warrant him being benched. It's just the talent and potential of Nazir Little is just maybe there's more upside there. And for the general consensus I got, it was really half and half. You got the guys like me who think Nazir hasn't been consistent enough to warrant you putting him in the lineup over Garrison Brooks, who night in, night out is giving you what he is, which is a guy who's going to get offensive putback for points, be in the right spots on rotations defensively, and hopefully help clean the glass. And then you got the part of the fan base that thinks we need to embrace small ball, make us harder to guard, more athletic on offense and defense. And by him not starting, Roy Williams is wasting his talent, hurting us in recruiting. And then I had this one fan that told me that Walker Miller and Brandon Huffman should be our two bigs inside because everyone else is they're soft pansies.
Okay.
So
well, I'm gonna tell you right now, bud. That guy was hopefully joking. No offense to Brandon Huffman, who again I just mentioned. I think he's played well. Same with Walker Miller. But look, if we're going to sit here and really say that Walker Miller in specific is at the same talent level as Luke May, Garrison Brooks, or Sterling Manley, I don't know what to say. That guy, I think he was, but I really hope he was joking with you. And I want to tell you this. When you put these articles out there are people that are literally just there to troll. That's what they do. I mean, I get it all the time. I had people tell me during football season that Manny Miles or Jack Davidson would be better starting quarterbacks than any of the guys that we have out there. Most of the feedback is pretty good. I think that for the most part, really, and this is my thing. I want people to understand that, look, you cannot make a lineup change just to please recruits, because how do you know what these recruits are thinking? This is what everybody thinks they're thinking. If you're coming to Carolina, look, I'm pretty sure that Roy is pretty straightforward with a lot of these kids to tell them that, look, man, if you come here, you're going to have to put in some work. And they've seen it. They've known that for years. What's changed? Nothing has. So for Nazir Little, look, I'm pretty sure Nazir Little knew coming to Carolina, I'm not just going to walk in and start. And from what I'm seeing so far from him, unless I'm missing it, is he really going on social media or maybe saying something in the locker room that maybe you're hearing from other reporters around the team that would signal that he is unhappy? Or even one of the other things people are concerned about is his father going around and telling other recruits' parents. To me, anything that I've seen, they're relatively supportive of what Roy is doing with Nazir. They say, look, he's got to earn it.
Yeah, because, in Vegas, I think it might have been after the UCLA game, a reporter asked Roy after the game, because there's been a lot of negative feedback from NBA scouts, NBA writers, even college basketball guys that have just baffled by the fact that this 5-star talent's on the bench, and Roy was just kind of like, I don't give a damn what social media says about what I'm doing. And they got back to Nazir, and Nazir was pretty much like, I came here to learn how to play the game of basketball at the highest level possible. I put my trust and faith in this man. I'm going to continue to trust him in what's best for my game. So as far as, we know, Roy and Nazir are on the same page in terms of, look, it's not... I think Nazir understands he has NBA aspirations and all that other stuff, but right now, his main focus is to win games for the University of North Carolina. And, right now they're doing that. It also doesn't hurt, they asked Kobe White the other day, what is your goal while you're in school? To win a national championship. What is your individual goals? I have none. That's very rare in today's freshman player, because even if they are a one and done, they're pretty much, I'm here to get mine and get out and go get my money. These guys seem to have bought in to what this program is about, which is winning. One of my favorite sayings is, the Dick Vitale saying, you take care of the name on the front, they'll take care of the name on the back. I think these guys are doing that, and which is a good sign to see. And, I know we missed on the commit the other day to Duke.
Let me tell people this. It shouldn't shock anybody. Pretty much, if you were shocked by the fact that he picked Duke the other day, you don't follow recruiting clearly, because this was a guy that a lot of people knew was, the heels were off the table for him. The fact that the hat was even on the table made no sense. It was pretty much down to Michigan State and Duke, and most people beforehand already knew he was going to Duke. So if you thought that they were going to land him, I don't know what to tell you. But I'm not freaking out about this class. But back to the Nazir and Garrison Brooks thing. Let's just look at the stats. Nazir has the advantage in points per game at 12. But when you look at just about every other statistical category, they're just about the same. Garrison Brooks, same amount of assists as Nazir Little. That's the one thing about Nazir Little. He is not a guy that spreads the basketball around. And I feel like that might be one of the reasons why he's not out there. If you're going to be a stretch 4 or 3, because what would most likely happen is that Cam Johnson would move to the stretch 4. You've got to be able to move the basketball. You've got to be able to help others create. And maybe that's one of the reasons that he's not on the floor. For Garrison Brooks, it makes sense because he's a big man. So, I don't know. That could be one of the main reasons. Rebounding numbers, again, Garrison with 5.8, Kobe. Nazir with 4.8. So,
fairly
ultimately,
even.
Fairly even, especially because you're talking about a guy that's a little bit smaller than Garrison. How big is Nazir? What is he, 6'6", I think?
Something like that.
So a few inches shorter than Garrison. But still, that's the thing. We are not talking about a guy that is averaging like 14 and a half, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. This isn't a guy nearly averaging a triple-double sitting on the bench. Okay,
right.
Let's pump the brakes just a little bit, and trust me, I think, and here's the thing, again, Starting does not mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. I don't understand what people don't realize about that. My thing is, look, as the year goes along, the way you can evaluate this better is, when is Nazir playing? Is he playing late in games? Is he going to be on the floor in clutch moments when we need to win games? That's what matters. And first of all, an NBA scout should know that. That NBA scout is probably the Cleveland scout who decided to take Anthony Bennett in the first round, a.k.a. a dumbass, because clearly he knows nothing. I mean, you are not the guy that's in practice every day with these guys. You're not the guy that is coaching these guys up every night when they're out there. Just because you see talent doesn't mean that he is ready to go out there and start. Look, Roy Williams has been doing this for how long? 30 years. I'm pretty sure he knows what he's doing. I could be wrong, but I'm not. I mean, I don't know what else to say to these people.
Okay. Got that off your chest?
Yeah, I mean, that story just baffled me. I was like, you got an NBA scout that's coming in here and basically telling this guy, look, you got to start this guy for us. I mean, I'm sorry to tell you, man, Roy does not give a damn about you. He does not care. He is there for his own team. Whatever is best for us to win, that's what Roy's going to do. He's not going to say, well, this NBA scout really wants Nazir out there. He's really twisting my arm. I got to put him in. Sorry, man. That's not how it works. So they can keep pushing it. And, look, I think eventually he'll be out there. But at that point, then they won't be satisfied with something else. They'll say he's not playing enough minutes still. I mean, honestly, I think they really just want him to play 40 minutes and just never leave the floor. So, yeah, no, I don't buy into any of that. I think Nazir will, he'll probably be a one and done, but, we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what Roy ends up doing with him. I'm not too concerned yet. And I think, look, if there's going to be a game that could prove maybe what his role could end up being, tell you, if they're in the Gonzaga game hanging around and all of a sudden Roy feels like, hey, Nazir's going to give me the best chance to win here, I'm going to tell you Nazir will be in there late in the game.
I agree. I think we're going to stop that conversation for now. We'll, of course, talk about that probably next week. And, it's just probably
throughout the year, yeah.
It'll be our version or my version of the Larry Fedora, which you had on your podcast for so many straight weeks.
I think that's still going on, no lie.
Yeah, maybe.
There is a rumor that he is still lurking somewhere in Chapel Hill. He might be the new OC. Check out our podcast, the Heel Tough Blog podcast, after this to see.
And so now we're going to transition into our fun topic of tonight.
Here we go.
Something that I thought of and I was wanting to talk about, but we've had some losses that we just had to discuss. And so we're going to give our listeners and the fans our Mount Rushmore of players that we've watched since we've started watching Carolina basketball, which for me has been about 11 to 12 years. And then
about the same time.
And then we'll do our top four or Rushmore overall of the history of the program, which is going to be
tougher, I think.
A hard one to come up with this because when you have a program as great as this one with as many players, it's hard to just pick four.
We've got the first three.
Yeah, the fourth one's going to be going to be debatable. So I'm going to let you go first with your list of players that you've watched in your time of being a Carolina basketball fan.
So how do you want me to do this? Do you want me to go from most sure on the Rushmore to least sure, like out of the four? So and then maybe hit on some of the guys that we could also potentially throw in? Or do you want me to start with the ones that maybe, would be on the fringe and then get up to the most sure? Because, I think we should just go with, most sure. Because, I think everybody knows who the first person is.
Yeah. You can do your most sure to your least sure. Mine's going to be different because I have a different affinity with players. But you can do that. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, first of all, Tyler Hansborough is definitely on there. Let's just set that away. Do I even need to explain this one? I mean, arguably the best player in ACC history. In my opinion, is the best player in ACC history, and it's not a debate. That all the statistics are there, and we all saw this guy. I'm going to be honest with you. I am actually still to this day very shocked that he did not make it in the NBA just because of his tough-nosed style of play. I thought he would find a niche somewhere, and unfortunately, it just never happened. But ultimately, in Carolina history, especially from the players that we've seen, he's got to be on there. Number 2 is Marcus Page. Well, all-time three-point leader in program history. Guy that, we saw just lay it all out on the line. And, his senior year, he had some trouble shooting the basketball. We all remember that, but come on. This guy was the real deal, and I don't see any way that you could leave him off. He's a guy that just, when you look back at the point guards, we have so many great point guards. Out of the best scoring guards, he's got to be up there. He's got to be probably in the top 2 or 3. He's really that great. I think the next one has to be Joel Berry. Second all-time in three-point shots made. Guy that led the 2017 team to a national championship. And, really a guy that just the last 2 years was pretty dominant in his time in Chapel Hill. What he did in the Final Four, the year they won the championship, was unbelievable. He carried this team throughout, those last 2 years. Good portion of those last 2 years. He was the guy that was counted on, and he really stepped up. So I'd have Joel Berry on there. And then number 4, I have Ty Lawson. I think Ty Lawson really was an essential part of that title team. Just the ability to distribute the basketball, how quickly he was able to get down floor. But, look, he was a guy that could distribute the basketball well. But, unlike Kendall Marshall, he was a guy that could get he would score his points. He could shoot the ball from deep as well. Again, not as good of a shooter as Marcus Page or Joel Berry from 3, but still a guy that when needed to, he could knock down those big shots. So, yeah, those are the guys that I have in my 4. I don't feel it's really super debatable. I think there are a couple of names that you could possibly throw in there, but I think for the most part, I'm pretty solid on the guys that I have on that list.
Yeah. For me, when I think of my Mount Rushmore, I get what you're saying about Hansborough. That'd be year 1 or your first guy. For me, it's Joel Berry, because he was just a guy that from his sophomore season, the junior run to the national championship, and the senior year was just a guy that, I grew to love as a competitor. I thought he represented the university well on the court, a great guy off the court. I get emotional talking about his performance in the Final Four on basically 2 bad ankles, getting us back to a national, winning a national championship. Accomplished almost everything you can ask a player to accomplish in college basketball, outside of winning ACC Player of the Year and the Bob Cousy Award. He's that accomplished among Carolina guards all time. And
he was in the running for both of those awards.
Yes.
So let's not act like he just didn't produce and we're going with a homer pick here.
Right. And so for me, he's my currently, it's changed over the last couple of years, but he's my most favorite Tar Heel I've got to watch play. Just a guy that I'm wearing his jersey right now as we're doing this podcast.
Hansborough is mine, if anybody hasn't, picked up on that.
Second for me, also this guy was on your list, is Marcus Page.
Yeah.
Because it's really not fair to him that he got bumped down the list because he didn't win a national championship, but this was a guy, and when I think about it, he probably is my favorite outside of the national title, because this was a guy who, as a freshman, I could not stand. And I didn't understand why we recruited
so bad
him,
his freshman year.
why he was playing. this, that, and the other. ACC tournament comes around, all of a sudden, this little guy's not missing. And Roy Williams calls him a tough little nut, which if you get that nickname, he thinks you're going to be pretty doggone good. And, sure enough, he was. And this was just a guy that committed it to the program at a time that nobody was wanting to come here. Dealt with a lot of crap from the media and the fan base off the court with his play on the court. Stuck it out. Got us to a national championship in 2016. Which is probably the greatest shot in Carolina basketball history that ended up in a losing effort. One that, still pains me to the day, haunts me some nights in my dreams. And just a guy that, represented what we stand for as good as anybody. 3 for me, you get to Tyler Hansborough. Arguably the best player to ever play at the University of North Carolina while in college.
Oh, I don't think there's any argument about it. The statistics are there, folks. He's the best.
We all know he wasn't the player in the NBA that Michael Jordan was, but you can't look at what Jordan did in Chapel Hill and compare it to Tyler Hansborough, a guy who was a 4-time All-American, 4-time first-team All-ACC, 4-0 in Cameron Indoor Stadium, only player to ever accomplish that feat, all-time leading scorer, left it on the floor every night, competed, got his ass kicked in 2008, and came back to school in 2009, not to improve his draft stock, because in some ways he would have been a higher pick in 2008 than he was in 2009. But he came back with one goal in mind, which was won a national championship. And by God, they did it. That was a team on a mission from the first game of the season until the final horn sounded against Michigan State. Really a fun guy to watch. He's what you want in a guy that, not the most talented, but just got good because he worked his tail off. And that's what just a good story. And just a guy that, we all loved watching play. 4 for me is going to be a little oddball that I've got to watch play was Tyler Zeller. Was a guy that, as a freshman, kind of looked, at times like, hey, what's this guy? Had a cowlick in his head, didn't have any lift on his jump shot.
He had one of the weirdest jump shots I think I've ever seen in my life.
But just a guy that I got to watch develop for 4 years, and by the time he was a senior, and I'm just sitting there thinking, I thought he was the most efficient big man in the country. You knew what you're going to get out of him every night, 15-8. Was a guy that I thought deserved to play in a Final Four, deserved to play for a national championship. Ultimately, it didn't happen once Kendall Marshall broke his wrist. But a guy that I've always loved, was just good defender, good rebounder. And for me, he's number 4. I know some people are going to maybe have Ty Lawson.
Well, he was on the 2009 team.
He was, so
yeah, he got to play.
I wanted him to be more
like one of the main guys. Yeah. I feel you. Yeah.
I know you had Lawson, and you know how I feel about Ty Lawson. That was my guy for many a year.
Oh yeah.
Then you have maybe Kennedy Meeks because of how good he was in the 17 run to the national championship, where you have guys that loved Kendall Marshall because as a passer, probably the best pure passer in the history of the program outside of Ed Cota.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Reggie Bullock, I think, has to be on there just because of how he could take over games at times. P.J. Hairston, I think a lot of people will forget about him just because, he was eventually removed from the team. But, he was a guy that when he was out there, remember, entering that season, there were a lot of people that thought he could be the ACC Player of the Year. He was really that good. I'm trying to think of some of the other guys that we had. Danny Green's a guy that, was fantastic off the bench, and then eventually had to come in and be a starter. And then with the national championship team, of course, Wayne Ellington, just a knockdown 3-point shooter. What What else? I mean, there's so it's just crazy how many guys that we could throw in here and talk about. Bryce Johnson has to be mentioned. By his senior year, if I'm going with guys that just emotionally, I had an attachment to and really just loved. I mean, Bryce Johnson might be right up there with Hansborough. I mean, just the intensity that he played with, the love of the game. I'll never forget seeing him cry after they lost the national championship. I mean, one of the worst moments of my life, and just seeing him tear up. I mean, just a guy that cared about the game so much. And, he's just, man, one of those guys, And I think, this year, there's going to be, guys on this team that will eventually be on this list. We'll just have to kind of wait and see. I mean, I think one of the guys that's on this year's roster that might be already on some lists, or Luke May, is Luke May because, of course, the shot against Kentucky, what he did last year. But we'll see. Some of these other guys will probably be added, and it'll be interesting to see, maybe down the line when we do this, maybe in a few years, maybe in 5 years, who some of the other guys are that have been added to this list and potentially to the next list that we're going to go with.
Yeah. So we're going to transition into, which might be more of a debate between us, depending on who our 4 guy is.
This is going to be nuts here, because I've listed just a few of the names already, and it's gotten crazy.
So I'm going to give you my Mount Rushmore of all-time greats.
Do we even have to the first 3? Okay, we're going to say them right here. Okay, it's Hansborough, right?
Yes.
And then Phil Ford.
Yes.
And then Michael.
Yes.
And there you go. And so the debate begins from there.
Yeah.
Because of those 3, I guess you could debate what order they're in, but again, this is the Mount Rushmore, so it's really that's not really the debate, right? We're just trying to put the 4, not the order in which they're in.
If I had to do an order, I'm going Hansborough, Jordan, Worthy. Worthy's behind Jordan because he didn't win a national championship. That's maybe not fair to Ford because he was so daggum good, but Michael hit at the time the most important shot in the history of the program.
Oh, you meant Dean Ford. Smith. You said Worthy.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I see your list, and now Worthy's in my head.
There you go.
So, yeah, I would put Jordan second, Ford third, just because Jordan hit the shot to get Dean Smith his first title, yada. And so we get to number 4. And my guy is a guy that people know the name, maybe don't know the story. But my guy for number 4 is Lenny Rosenbluth. This is a guy that I've always argued when you talk about greats, it's probably in your top 5. When you think about that 57 team, which went undefeated, he was their go-to guy. I just recently read a book about that 57 title team, and this was a guy who told the coach, Frank McGuire, going into the year, hey, we're going undefeated. This is what we're about to do. We've bought in. I think he averaged, it was over 26 points a game that senior year. And just a guy that, because that was the first year that there was televised games. And so that was the first that Tar Heel fans, that are granted a lot older than us, got to see play. And got to see how good he was on offense and defense. So that's my number 4, is Lenny Rosenbluth. Won a national championship. Was probably the introduction to a big-time player in the state that Frank McGuire got to come down here from New York. And so that's my number 4 guy.
That's a good one. Yeah, no, Lenny definitely one of those guys that I think just a lot of people kind of forget about because it was so long ago. It was in that 57 class. But, I said Worthy. I said James Worthy. Really just, the athleticism from Worthy. You look at how much he meant to that title team. And, combine him with Michael Jordan, it was just fantastic to see those two out there. But, man, there's so many guys that you could debate back and forth. I chose Worthy, but I would say, you look at some of the other names that I had on here. Vince Carter has to be talked about, a guy that unfortunately didn't win a national championship, but this guy was amazing. Just jumped out of the building. His highlight reel dunks everybody will remember, but he wasn't just that. He was a guy that could score the basketball. Antoine Jamison, another one that a lot of people, he didn't win a national championship, so, I don't take anything away from him. I think he was just dominant. And, of course, we saw what he went on to be in the NBA. Kenny Smith, arguably, I think maybe the best player to never win a national championship at Carolina because of just how effective he actually was. That team in '84 should have won the national championship and didn't. But, he's got to be up there. Donald Williams, I think, has to be up there just because of how good of a three-point shooter he actually was. You've got to remember, he's still third all-time in three-point shots. And remember, he was on that 93 team. So, yeah, he's one that, that's another, again, that 93 team I feel like is always kind of forgotten about. But, man, dude, Donald Williams was something. He was just dominant. Sean May has to be on there as well from the 05 team. Just the size for Sean May. He just dominated people. And we saw it in that national championship game in 05 against Illinois. Sam Perkins, I think, also has to come into the conversation just a little bit. A guy that just, he was so dominant in his time. And then, of course, the one that always everybody will also mention, guy that was also a great player, but, of course, the backstory to him as well is Charlie Scott. A lot of people will also put him up there, and rightfully so, the first African-American player at Carolina. So, when I look at it, I think there's so many different guys that you can go with, but I picked James Worthy, and this is the thing. We get to sit and debate about these types of things. Some of these other universities, let's be real, I don't even think State would have one or two guys that would go up on a Mount Rushmore. So, to be able to sit here and debate about things like this, I think it's just awesome. And, I think, some of those guys, I don't know if you have anybody else that you would add to that list. Maybe Montross, I think, would have to be probably somewhere up there too. Maybe just in the conversation.
There's so many people that when you think about all the greats, you look at. You had Lewis and Cunningham, Billy Cunningham in the '60s, mm-hmm. and you had his first name is Bob Lewis. I think his first name slipped my mind in the '60s, with the beginning of the first of three Final Four teams for Dean Smith. You got George Glamick in the 40s, who was blind and was still effective, led the team to the 46 national title game. There are so many great players that played here, and some of we just don't know because it went TV in the 20s and 30s and 40s. They were good players, and the list goes on and on. You could maybe put Marcus Page in that discussion. You look at what Luke May did, and people might put them on because of that moment that led the team back to the Final Four, and it's like you said, we're lucky enough to have a list of, let's say, 20-some odd guys that we think could be worthy to be on a Mount Rushmore of all-time players to play at Carolina. Not many schools have that kind of history, tradition, excellence that we have, so I just thought this would be a fun topic to discuss.
It was, man, for sure.
While we have a lot of downtime in the month of December, and I enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, man, I think it's it was a great idea. I'm glad you came up with it, and I think this is also something that hopefully people will interact with it. I think it'll be something that a lot of people will like. I think a lot of people will have a lot of opinions on it for sure, especially the players all the time. I think because a lot of people will have the guys that they've seen and the guys that they have connections to. And we have the guys that we're kind of connected to as well. That was interesting, I think, when we saw, with the players that we've seen in person and put our Mount Rushmore of them. It brought out some of those, emotional attachments to guys. So, I thought it was definitely a great idea. And, I can't say I could probably come up with a better idea for the football one. I will be trying, but that was a fantastic one, bud.
So with that, we'll start winding this thing down. As you all know, Carolina's off up until next Saturday night against Gonzaga, who, like you said, currently number one ranked team in the country. Mm-hmm. The biggest probably home game of the season aside from the Duke game.
Right.
I think the atmosphere will be second best to the Duke game. 7 o'clock tip, so plenty of time for people to hang out in Chapel Hill, maybe go to the museum, get yourself psyched up for what's going to be an important game for Carolina to get really their first signature win.
I mean, let me ask you this question. I mean, because you're a guy that's a little more locked in on basketball than me. When you look at this game in the perspective of, I mean, just kind of recent, how big is this out of conference? This has to be one of the biggest out of conference games in a long, long time.
We're
right?
talking for Carolina, right?
For Carolina, yes.
I think, like I said, I've been watching for 11 to 12 years. When I think of where this like non-conference game lists that they've played, it's probably second behind the 2011-2012 year where they went to Kentucky, and that was a top 5 matchup. In my opinion, those were the 2 best teams in college basketball. Carolina ultimately lost the game by 1 in Rupp Arena. But since then, since that, they played Kentucky 2 years after that in their home gym. Really a big win for Carolina. But both programs were kind of in transition. Then I think of some ACC Big Ten Challenge games. I know they played Ohio State in 2007, 2 top 10 teams, so you got to put that up there. 2009, Michigan State was a top 10 team that they throttled in Ford Field. So for me, this is probably the second biggest non-conference game that I've got to see him play. I know they played UConn when Roy first came back home, and both times those were UConn, I think, was ranked number 1 actually both times we played them. So interesting game. I'm a guy who before 2017 didn't have a lot of respect for Gonzaga in the program, thought they played a bunch of nobodies and beat up on them. That team took our team 60 minutes. Gained a lot of respect from Mark Few, or 40 minutes. I don't know why. It felt like 60 because how long the game took. But gained a lot of respect from Mark Few.
You are right about that.
I'm going to keep an eye, watch some of them tomorrow. I don't know what time they play. If they're playing, of course, while the Cowboys are on, I'll be focused on the Cowboys playing.
Who do they play?
They play Tennessee, which is
that's right.
Team.
Yeah, wow.
A team that I think's Final Four potential with talent, coaching, what have you. So I'm really excited for the Gonzaga game. We'll, of course, have a full breakdown preview later in the week.
Mm-hmm.
And so, is there anything else you have to add to tonight's edition of the Roy's Boys podcast?
Nah, man, I think that's gonna do it. So, yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no problem. As always, I'll tweet this out. We'll upload it on Facebook. It's been submitted to all the various sites, iTunes, Google Play. And of course, you can always subscribe to Spreaker. Actually, had a guy the other day on Facebook ask where he could go to subscribe, so I think we actually might have had our first subscriber to the pod.
Yes, one person listened to this besides us.
So we're hoping to grow. We'll be back with you guys later in the week. Hope you guys listen, get back to us. As always, go Tar Heels.